Hey, welcome to the Tales of a Gearhead podcast. I'm your host, Stacey David. This podcast is brought to you by LMC Truck. Keep them on the road is their slogan, and they supply the parts to help you do that. Also, Cornwell Tools, the choice of professionals and hot rods and enthusiasts alike. If you want quality tools, Cornwell's the place to go. Let's get to it. We're going to jump right into the levels of projects that you can get into. The last few weeks we've been running through these levels. We have run through level 1 through 4, and today we're on level 5. Level 5, of course, being the most difficult, in-depth project that you can take on. And I know a lot of you guys are involved in these kind of projects out there, and I want to be real clear here. This is something that I think anybody can do if you take your time. The key to any of these projects and any of these levels, and the whole reason that I'm laying out these levels, is that I want people to be able to look at it and go, oh, that's a little beyond my skill level, it's a little beyond my tools, it's a little beyond my workspace level, so I need to not push into that, because it's very easy to take a project and start on a level 1 or a 2, and then before you know it, you've taken it into a level 3 or 4, and you're over your head. That's the biggest problem that happens with projects. That's what we're trying to help you guys not do. So let's walk through the levels really quick. Level 1 is the get it running and driving project. That's simple, it's easy, it's fun, you can do that. For those of you that are out there that are flippers, you find a car that's not running, you get it running, you sell it for a few extra bucks, and you're on to the next one. That's a great way to have fun with cars. It's a great way to learn about cars too. The second level is the cosmetic and mechanical restoration. This is where you not only get it running and driving, but you also go through the cosmetics, which could be a paint job, interior, buffing it out or repaint, you know, whatever that may be, and also going through the mechanicals, getting the engine running, getting it running better, putting a hotter engine in it, bigger cam, that kind of deal. So there's obviously a pretty big area in the level 2. And once again, this is an area where you learn a lot about just general mechanics. You know, obviously, you know, you're going to be going through brakes, suspension, that kind of deal. Then level 3, of course, is the resto mod, which is everything that you did in the mechanical and cosmetic restoration, but now you're adding modern stuff. This is where you're adding modern engines and modern suspensions into a classic car. This is the classic hot rod deal, and this is where most people want to do a resto mod when you talk to them. They want to be driving around in their classic Falcon or their old four-wheel drive truck, but they want stronger axles in it, or they want, you know, a better transfer case, or they want to lift and they want to do something that, you know, makes it more modern. They want to put a diesel in place of their gas engine, that kind of deal. Then level 4 is the frame off build, the frame off restoration. This is where you go so far where you actually pull the body off of the frame and you start doing what is called a ground up build. Whether it's an original style build or it's a resto mod style build, this is when you go to the extra level of taking the body off. And the reason that's a level 4 is that it takes at least 3 bays of workspace and a ton of tools to pull that off. You know, now you're getting into a little bit of fabrication, you're getting into a little bit of custom building. Level 5, which we're going to talk about today, is the custom build. And the custom build is everything that we just mentioned with, of course, a creative aspect to it. In other words, this is where you're taking a vehicle and you're totally blowing it apart and going, I'm going to put this in there, I'm going to put this out of here, this is out of a junkyard, this is out of that, and it's wrapped around a ton of fabrication, a ton of building, a ton of creativity. Most of the vehicles that I do on the Gears TV show get into the custom build. For example, I'm doing the SR71 Rapid Tool Express right now. It's a 59 Ford panel truck, and I'm putting 60 DeSoto fins on it with 61 Thunderbird taillights, doing all kinds of custom stuff down the sides, put on a 58 Thunderbird grill and bumper on the front, and you have to make all this stuff work. So as you can see, a custom build, you start to get into heavy fabrication, heavy design, heavy custom work, as well as you need to be you have to have advanced skills in paint and body work. You have to have advanced skills in metalworking. You have to have advanced skills in engine. You have to have advanced skills in electrical, because what happens, and this is where a lot of the questions that you'll hear me answering, a person will come in and they'll go, hey, listen, I've got an I Did It steering column, and I've got a painless wiring harness, and I have a vintage air conditioning system. How do I make them all work together? That's where when you run into those kind of problems, you are into a custom build. You can call the tech lines at these places and they can get you down the road so far, but they're not sitting there doing your project. You're the one that's put all this together. In other words, you're the one that's put the ingredients into this cake. You're the one that has to make it edible. So you have to make it happen. If there's one area that when I talk to people about their project where they get in over their head, this is it. They get too deep into something. They don't realize they're pushing from a resto mod or from a frame off restoration into a custom build until they're already deep into it. And they've spent a lot of money. They've like, well, I've got this supercharger and I've got this Art Morrison chassis, or I've got this, Roadster Shop chassis, and I'm trying to put all this stuff together. And it's like, you've spent a ton of money and you have no idea how to put all this stuff together. So what they end up doing is coming to a guy like me or Dave Kindig or Chip Foose or something like that. And we charge a lot of money to fix your problems. And that's not the way you want to do it. You want to do it yourself. You want to be able to figure this out. And you can do it just as well as we can. You just need to take your time, make sure that you're learning it along the way. Now, another thing about the custom build, it's not all about the money. It's not how much money you spend. That's not the criteria here for what makes a level 5. The level 5 is custom. In other words, when you start breaking the norm and doing crazy stuff, that's when you go into a custom build. A great example of that I'm doing on the show is the Snowcat. This is not a high dollar project. This is a 70s Thiokol Snowcat. And basically I took this old Snowcat and I took a 48-52 Ford pickup bed, chopped 18 inches out of the center of the bed, 5 inches off the bottom, and made a custom little bed for this Snowcat. And then I'm putting axles from a later model Snowcat up underneath it. It's all custom stuff. And I'm not spending a lot of money on it. Sergeant Rock was another one. Everything was custom, everything was hand built on that. Now, you'll spend a lot of time in it, but as far as spending money for parts, a lot of times, anybody that's ever built a rat rod, that's a custom build. Guys are taking these things and they're chopping them up and they're creating sometimes art, and so it's kind of open to your interpretation. Now, there's a lot of people out there that are more original restoration type guys, and that's fine. Not everybody leans that way. Some people love to do original restoration stuff, and if that's your pocket, that's where you need to be. But for those that want to venture into the custom build and do something that's completely different, this is a very difficult area because you're flying without a safety net out here. When you get into the custom build, you can't just call up somebody. Put it this way. If you've bought, an Art Morrison chassis or a Chris Alston chassis or whatever, and you cut that thing in half and narrowed it and did all kinds of crazy stuff to it, you forget about any kind of warranty or anything. You're on your own. So you better understand suspension geometry. You better understand frame geometry. You better understand metal work. You better understand what you're doing if you want a safe, reliable vehicle, something that when you get into it, you turn the key and you have that crazy, cool vehicle that you wanted to do. That is a custom build. Okay, that gives you all 5 levels. Now, one of the things that's important here is to understand that if you want to skip levels, you have to be really careful doing that because there is a skill level that is learned at each level that serves you very well in the higher levels. So you'll either have to learn it as you're doing the higher level or you'll learn it as you work your way up to it. Either way, you got to learn the skills and you got to build the tools and you got to have the space to be able to do these, and you have got to be able to stay organized or you will never finish a project, and that is not what you want to do. Okay, now that we have those 5 levels out there, you will hear me refer to these a lot when I answer your questions and stuff. That's one of the reasons I wanted to lay out this groundwork so I can refer to these projects and I can refer to these levels as I'm discussing projects. Now, one of the biggest things that you have to be careful of, one of the reasons I brought this up, is as you get into a project, it's very easy to accidentally slide into the higher level. And now that you kind of know what those levels are, you can identify it really quick and go, oh man, I was kind of hoping to do this, but that means I'm going to have to pull the body off and I'm going to have to do this. And instead of your buddies going, hey man, let's just do it. Let's just pull the body off, man. Let's do it. We got the guys here. We got the beer. We got the pizza. Let's pull the body off. You can sit there and go, no, because I'm going to have to put that body somewhere and I'm going to have to deal with it. And I really don't know how to pull the body off. And that way you can sit there and look at it and intelligently make a decision that hopefully won't get you backwards on your project. Listen, guys, I've seen this happen 1,000 times. I've been involved in all kinds of stuff. I have jumped off many, many roofs in my life. So I'm trying to give you guys some sound advice that will hopefully help you finish a project, get it going, so you enjoy it. So you're out there and enjoying working on it, and you're not rolling your eyes going, gosh, if I'd have only known. You know, one question I get asked a lot is, what is a great first project for somebody? And my answer is always the same: an old truck. For several reasons. First of all, they're cheap, they're easier to find. It's okay if you drive them around all beat up. And there's great sources for parts from like LMC. They carry all kinds of stuff, whether you're doing a custom build, if you're doing an original build, or you're doing a full-on hot rod thing, you can find stuff in their catalog. So getting parts is not that hard. And they really support the truck life, which is, if you've never been into the truck world, as you start to dig into the truck life, you'll see that it's kind of represents Americana. So if you need parts, man, LMC is the place to go. Here's an example of something that happened the other day. A friend of mine came to me about a year ago, and he's like, I want to build my own Daytona coupe. And he said, I want it to go 200 miles an hour, and I'm going to do all this crazy stuff with it. And I said, you realize, of course, how much money you're going to spend if you're going to actually have a car that's going to run over 200 miles an hour. I said, the original Daytonas didn't go that fast. You're going to have to put a pan underneath it. You're going to have to put a splitter. I mean, you're going to have to do some serious aerodynamic work on it. And he goes, well, I don't mind doing that. I'm going to do all that. And I'm going to drive it every day and all this stuff. Well, I said, really what you should do is just go out and buy yourself about a 10-year-old Corvette for about 30 grand and have a ball. He goes, well, I don't want to do that. Well, a year later, he has about 70 grand into this car. He's nowhere near being finished. And he actually came up to me, you know, at an event, and he said, you know, I should have listened to you. He said, I should have just bought a Corvette. Because now he's spent pretty much his life savings putting his car together. He's nowhere near finished with it, has no idea when he's gonna finish it, and he's a long way from ever enjoying it. I guarantee you his wife and kids are not real happy about that either. I say that as a cautionary tale. That's happening all across the nation to people. And listen, even if you're a professional car builder or a professional restoration person, it's easy to fall into that kind of thing. That's why I've got the planning book out there. That's why, you know, that's kind of the purpose of this podcast, is to try to encourage you guys to stay focused on what you want to do. Don't get sidetracked on your project. Try to keep it online. And man, you'll build a great project. You'll have a great time doing it. All right, we're going to take a break, and hopefully we can have some fun answering some of your questions. All right, we'll see you in a minute. You know, one question I get a lot these days is, where do you go to find quality tools? And that's a legitimate question, because you used to be able to go down and buy them at the hardware store, but you can't anymore. But a great solution is somebody like Cornwell Tools. Not only are they America's oldest tool company, they've been in business 100 years, man, so they know what they're doing. It's the top level tools, but they also deliver right to your door. So all you have to do is get on their website, find out where a dealer is near you, and the guy will show up. You know, you can have him show up weekly, daily, monthly, whatever, and he will take care of your tool needs. So if you're looking for quality tools, the best in the business, check out Cornwell. You won't be disappointed. All right, this next question is one that we get a lot. This is a really good question. This is from John, and he says, I got an 04 Ram 2500 4x4 with an automatic, and I'm wondering if it's possible to change from a Hemi to a diesel. Well, John, anything is possible. That's the deal. Just depends on your budget and your skill level. Now, just because you can doesn't mean you should. Now, swapping to a diesel is a really popular project. Diesels are hot, and they're great engines. But whenever you're changing something that has a whole different fuel system, it's a little more involved than just going from a small block to a big block, or going from a Ford to a Chevy, or all that stuff. So let me walk you through it really quick, just so you have an idea kind of what you're looking at. First of all, you got to find the engine, and you have to make sure the engine is going to fit in the engine bay. Now, you're lucky here because you're dealing with a Ram, so obviously you could get those with a Cummins. So the Rams actually have room, and you're doing a 2500, so those actually came with Cummins, so you're good to go. Let's just start with the motor mounts. Now, you've got two choices here. You can either find the diesel motor mounts from a diesel truck, a diesel Ram, and hopefully you have some sort of a bolt-in deal, or you have to fabricate your own. or you have to get original ones and fabricate them to fit into your truck. That's going to be on you as far as your skill level and figuring that out, okay? And you need to make sure the motor drops in good. All right, your next is the transmission. You have a 2500 4x4 automatic, okay? You'll need to get a transmission that's going to work with the diesel you're putting in. And if you're going to do that, you also need a transfer case. So are you going to do a complete drivetrain swap or just a diesel swap? And if you're doing just a diesel swap, you need to get the adapter, if it exists, to put your existing transmission and transfer case behind that diesel. Chances are you're going to have to upgrade all the way back. That's what I would suggest. So you get something that matches all the way back there. So there's a cost involved there. And then there's cross members and all the stuff that go with that as well. Okay, so there's two factors. Okay, now how about your cooling system? It's going to be different on a diesel than it is going to be on a gasoline engine. So radiator probably need to be swapped out, a few things here and there. So you'll need to factor that in. Also, I'm sure you're going to want an intercooler. Gasoline engine does not have an intercooler, so you're going to need that full cooling system intercooler setup for the diesel you're putting in there. All right, now the fuel system. You have to completely set that tank up to run diesel, which, you know, whether you drain the tank, you run new lines, whatever you do, you're going to have to swap it over because they are not compatible. And you know that, so that is a big, it may not be a big cost, but there's a lot of time involved in there to making that to work right. All right, once you got the fuel system taken care of, your exhaust system obviously is different. So you're going to have to either buy an exhaust system or you're going to have one made. And having one made is not cheap. Anyway, you got the exhaust system and all that goes with that, the turbo and all that kind of thing. Then you got your electrical. Your ECM is going to be completely different. You know, so that's got to be swapped out. Your gauges have to work. And a lot of guys will pull the full wiring harness out of like a wrecked truck and swap it all over. There's a lot of ways to approach it. My advice to you, and this is what I tell guys that have not done this a lot, and I kind of judge this, if you're even asking this question, you're probably not in a position to try to pull this one off. I would suggest that you sell your gasoline truck and get a diesel. You will be so much further down the road, so much quicker if you get rid of the gasoline vehicle and just buy the diesel. Now you have everything matched, everything ready to go. And it's the same thing. If you have a diesel vehicle and you want to put gasoline in it, it's the same swap the other way around. This is not a real easy swap. There's a lot of things, you know, right down to, you know, the throttle cables and, you know, is it a drive-by-wire and the ECM with that. There's a lot to this. Here's another thing, John, that you may not be thinking about. A diesel engine weighs way more than your little Hemi in there. So a diesel truck has different springs in it. It has different axles usually. All of that has to be taken into consideration because you'll drop that diesel in there. That truck will sag all the way to the ground. You'll have a lowrider, man. You don't want that. So the suspension, the gear ratios, everything is all part of the diesel package. That's why they're so expensive. And that's why a lot of guys, you know, want those springs or want those axles that come out of there. You can find them, but really, once you start looking for upgraded axles and junkyards and stuff, you're going to be spending a lot of money because it's the big stuff. So keep all that in mind. There's a lot to making this kind of swap. You need to have the space to do it. You need to have the tools to do it. You need to have the know-how. It'd be much better just to get another truck. Hope that helps, John. It may not be what you want to hear, but it will save you a lot of hassle in the long run if you do that. A prime example of this kind of project is the heavy metal project that we've been doing on the show here. Now, the heavy metal project is a 69 cab over international truck that I pulled the gasoline engine out of and put a big Duramax diesel in. Now, this Duramax diesel has been warmed up by Pacific Performance, by PPE, and so it's kicking out 650 horsepower, 1,300 foot-pounds of torque. So that was the first thing I had to figure out, is what kind of power I had. Then I had to build motor mounts, transmission mounts, that are capable of handling that kind of power. So basically, I built them out of 1/4-inch steel, and they're huge motor mounts to keep that thing in position. And also the axles that we used on that came out of I think it was an 08 Chevy Top Kick, a 1-ton. Everything is heavy duty. It's got an Allison transmission behind it. It's all the original exhaust manifolds, but the exhaust we're doing on it is all hand-built. The cooling system is all hand-built. Power steering, all of the accessories are all in different locations. One of the things that caught me on this is being a cab over, you sit right over the top of the engine. Well, the motor sat in there such that one of the pulleys wanted to come right up through your hind end. So I had to lower the engine enough to clear, and then I had to make a little bubble in the floor pan so that pulley would clear. Anytime you're moving something like that, or putting a bigger engine in, there are so many aspects that you have to look at. Keep in mind, this podcast is made possible by our friends at LMC Truck and our friends at Cornwell Tools. All right, that wraps it up for us today. It is time for you to get out there, start working on something, build something with your own two hands, send in your questions, send in your pictures, let us know what you're working on. All right, we'll see you later.